there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of Scaryish. We're
Woo.
Scaryish. We do a podcast. I'm Robin Grace. That's Adam
Hello.
Diaz. And we're here with some, I think they're different topics than usual, maybe. Maybe yours is stemming off of your theme that you have going for the month so far, I think.
Correct.
And mine is different. It's just so different. So, yeah, you're going to go first, though. Wait. I'm doing a ghost town, just to let you guys know.
Right on.
Adam's doing another artifact, right?
A magical artifact, although I feel like this one's more mystical, because you'll find out.
Because it's real?
No, more or less because it's like doesn't have precise powers. Like a magical artifact, like if you gave me the Elder Wand, I'd know what I was doing with it. But this particular artifact I'm going to cover doesn't have like a hard, fast set of rules. It's just like crazy shit kind of happens.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm covering magical artifacts number 2. But you said you're doing a ghost town, so I'm excited to hear about that because I love me some ghost towns. But yeah, how you been for the last week, Robin? I mean, we haven't been in people's ear holes for a full 7 days. So what's the update on your sitch? You had a con this weekend, right?
Well, I did have a con. We had a con, like a kind of sort of mini con out here at Frankenson. It's like a little collectibles. I say little. It's a giant collectibles like warehouse. A lot of people go there to sell their wares. But yeah, it was fun. It was cool. Nice 2-day con type thing going on. It was
right
neat.
on. I was out here in Vegas. Spooky Mom was completing the end of her journey in Spain and Portugal. And I myself was raising the adorable puppy known as Anya, who is turning out to be a super adorable and cuddly dog. So that's been a fun adventure. And soon enough, I'll be able to take her places with me and then even let my mom watch after her because she has returned safe and sound home. So we're happy to hear that. But yeah, that pretty boring last 7 days for me. It's just been work, as the song would say.
Work.
Outside of that, like not a whole lot of exciting stuff happening. Maybe some exciting stuff coming up. Who knows? Maybe more of the same. Maybe some more boring stuff. You never know. So all I can tell you for sure is that we're covering 2 fun topics this week, and I believe I'm going to be going first. So with your blessing, I'll go ahead and jump right into it.
You're blessed.
Awesome. Thank you. So this week I am continuing my magical artifacts series, as Robin and I have mentioned. There are definitely quite a few to pick from, but there was one I mentioned last week that I was intending on doing. I had always intended for this week to be about this specific artifact. When I thought of this series, I was like, week 2 is definitely going to be that one. And it just so happens that the news from the entertainment world coincided somehow with what I'm going to be covering. So, like I mentioned, this is Magical Artifacts 2. Let's get into it. If you haven't heard what I'm about to tell you, I am so happy that I get to break the news to you. It is official. Not rumored, not someone heard it was happening, but officially confirmed by Warner Brothers Studios that not only is Constantine 2 happening, but Keanu Reeves will be reprising his role as John Constantine.
I am very, very excited. I don't know if my younger sister knows or not. I don't think I told her, but like we watched that movie legitimately on repeat. You know, like
I think it might be the movie
you
and I have watched the most too, because we used to have it as just background noise. And
it's so good.
Before
it's just so good.
Before we met, I watched it a million times too, because it's like it's just entertaining. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the story. I know there's a lot of people who could like put their pinkies up and tell me everything wrong with the movie from frame to frame, from shot to shot. Shove it up your ass. I don't care. I love Constantine. Super excited Constantine 2's coming out. A lot of people feel the same way. Enough where Warner Brothers is like, give the people what they want. Keanu has been wanting to do the sequel too. The original director is actually slated to come back to direct as well. Because of that, it probably won't come out until 2024 at the earliest. Might not even start filming until then, because the guy who did the original Constantine is directing the Hunger Games prequel movie. I don't know if you guys know that, but this is not.
I did not. I didn't know there was like, I guess, books covering the prequel?
I don't know if there are. If there are, I'd love to read them because it's about like President Snow and his rise to power. But let's not go down too far on the movie corner with Adam because that can be a very deep hole. I am just super jazzed about Constantine 2. And you might be thinking, why does that overlap? Maybe you don't know Constantine. Maybe you saw the title of the episode and you're like, never seen it. Or you don't know what the artifact is. Because obviously I'm building up all this mystery and you guys have already read the title of the fucking episode. I've been doing this like 250 episodes. But as anyone who, has seen the movie, I'm covering the Spear of Destiny. The Spear of Destiny has a very important part of the plot in Constantine 1. So I thought it was appropriate that I had this in mind. I mentioned it last episode, and then that came out like new Constantine movies. Oh my God. So the way I'm going to cover the Spear of Destiny for this week is similar to how I did last week. I'm going to go over what it is, what it can do, and then kind of a is it real / who has had it / where is it now section. So what is the Spear of Destiny? For those of you who haven't seen Constantine or read the Hellblazer comics, which is where Constantine is from, or the graphic novel that's little known called the Bible. I think I'm saying that right. No, it's the Bible. That's what it's called. The Spear of Destiny is, in fact, an artifact that is deeply, deeply connected to Christianity. And now that I say that, here comes the disclosure. This is a topic about something that you may, as a listener, deeply believe in. And I am not disparaging your faith in any way, shape, or form. I may make a joke here and there, like calling the Bible a graphic novel. But please don't get bent out of shape over it. I'm looking at this from an analytical standpoint. I truly believe that if any of the things I'm covering in the Magical Artifact series do exist, and there's a chance of them being recovered, you have to be in the analytical mindset. That said, let's jump into the Spear of Destiny. So this thing has many different names, all right? There's the Holy Lance, the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Spear, the Lance of Longinus. Like, why so many names? And who the fuck is Longinus? Like, maybe you don't know anything about this. So let's start at the beginning, all right?
Okay.
Well, as the story goes, there was this guy named Jesus.
Yeah.
So maybe you've heard of him. If you haven't heard the story of the Spear of Destiny, but you've heard of Jesus, in this moment you're like, oh yeah, this is like super connected to Christianity. So I'm not going to go into the story of Jesus too much. There's a lot of books that already do that. You can check those out if you want.
A lot of versions.
The Bible.
Read a book.
I'm going to skip to the end of Jesus's like story-ish. There's a lot more that's written about him, but let's just skip to the end of like this particular part. So there's this guy, his name is Jesus. He gets in some trouble, and he basically gets executed by means of crucifixion. For those of you who've never heard of this, crucifixion is when you're put up on a cross and left, typically for days, to expire. If you're thinking like, I've never heard of this, I don't know.
There's no way.
There's no way. Everyone's seen Game of Thrones. They do that to all those people on the roads of Marine. So clearly we've all seen this. So that said, happens to Jesus. But once he gets put up on the cross, he doesn't die right away, obviously. So the powers that be order a soldier to just stab him. And like, side note, I didn't really realize that growing up. Like, I remember learning the story of the crucifixion, like I grew up Lutheran. And then like eventually like we stopped attending church. My parents just started like reading me the Bible and teaching it to me. And then eventually I learned like, oh, like Jesus didn't die on the cross. Jesus died by being stabbed. Like a soldier was told like, it's taking too long, just stick him. And the soldier followed the orders and he stabbed Jesus in his side. And like, if you read up on the story, you can figure out exactly where he was stabbed. And that is actually what killed Jesus Christ. The soldier's name was Longinus. That's why it's known as the Lance of Longinus. The spear that actually killed Jesus is known as the Spear of Destiny. So the spear that was used to kill Jesus, because it had the blood of Jesus Christ spilled on it, became this magical artifact.
What about all the wood and stuff that had the blood on it?
They say they don't know where the shaft is, but the spear is supposedly in two separate pieces. Like the spearhead was like broken because it was quite a long spear.
Oh,
I'm going to post pictures.
I meant the actual cross he stood on.
Oh, the actual cross from that he was stood, quote unquote. He didn't stand on that fucking thing.
Wasn't there like a small platform that they got to stand on? Like,
I think that's in the Care Bear version, so you don't have to know how fucking gruesome a crucifixion is. They don't like stand on it; they get nailed to it. That's the whole 9 Inch Nails thing.
Got it.
So, all right, we don't want to go too deep into this. I really don't want to touch on anyone's faith too much, and I really don't want the anti-Christian people to be like, I hate you so much for covering this episode.
It's just like if the Spear of Destiny is, magical, mystical, because it has the blood of Christ on it, wouldn't the nails and the wood?
Everything would be. There's actually a movie. I know this is stupid, but there's a movie called Demon Knight, and the knight is a K, and it's about like the war between demons trying to take over the world and the people that hold them at bay. It is a Tales from the Crypt movie. I know this sounds stupid.
Okay.
It is awesome. And the entire the entire concept is someone has a key which looks like a cross, and it has red liquid in it, and it was collected from someone who was a witness at Jesus Christ's crucifixion while he was bleeding out. And he filled it with the blood of Christ because it has such magical powers, and they use it for various things, mainly to like prevent the demons from crossing through. So yeah, like it's the entire idea of like Jesus' blood being magical has been played out in a bunch of different ways, including Tales from the Crypt. By the way, I fucking love Demon Knight. If you've never seen it, it's a great horror movie. Billy Zane's the bad guy.
Heard of this?
Billy Zane is so charismatic in that movie. You almost root for the
if
bad
he's
guys.
in it, I have to watch it.
It's good.
Love him.
If anyone who's listening right now and they've seen Demon Knight, I hope you guys agree with me. All right, let's get back to this whole super controversial topic before anyone gets too mad. So I should let you know that, spoiler alert, Jesus' last name is Christ, so that's the connection to Christianity. So if you've never read the Bible, I just spoiled the ending for you, my bad. That said, the reason it's called Spear of Destiny is because it is, coated in the blood of Jesus Christ, and because it has such, like, important blood on it, it basically leads you to grandiose things if you're in possession of it. Now, obviously, this artifact's general existence would be incredibly important if we could verify like any of the supposed Spear of Destinies that are out there around the world claiming to be the authentic one was actually authentic. It would be very important, not only because it would provide a physical piece of evidence from a time period where it's almost impossible to validate any story or any individual's existence, regardless of how famous or infamous they were, but just to have an object that played such a pivotal part in a religion's origin would be incredibly significant. Like Robin said, like, is there wood left of the cross Jesus was on? That would also be incredibly important, So the Spear of Destiny having a legend around it isn't so much as important as if like we could actually find the Spear of Destiny and say like, yeah, we've authenticated it, like this is real. That lends some sort of credence to like a religion's origin. And that's something that very rarely happens in today's histories. Despite its significance, like let's just take away the idea of what the Spear of Destiny is and just treat it as like a magical artifact no one's ever heard of. What makes it special? Well, it's supposed to just bring great fortune to you and bring you towards a great destiny. That's why it's called the Spear of Destiny. Like individuals who have supposedly had it in their possession have had, let's say, big things happen for them. I say big because the word great doesn't seem appropriate. Like, do you remember that scene in the first Harry Potter movie where Harry's getting his wand? And it's the one that's like the twin of Voldemort's wand.
Yeah.
And the wand maker's all fucking creepy about it. And he tells him like, we can expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. And then he tells him like, after all, Voldemort did great things. Terrible, yes, but great. And that's the idea of the word being great.
You gotta say it like him.
No, I already did it once. I did the voice one time. This isn't D&D. But like great in the idea of it being grand, or large scale. Right. In the scheme of like humanity, not in the idea that it's super positive. That said, we've kind of gone over the history. We've gone over what it's supposed to do. Who has supposedly held the Spear of Destiny throughout history? What's that?
Jeff Bezos.
Fuck, right? It would make sense, but all right, let's start at some of the earlier ones that I could find. There's a lot of rumors about people that have held it. But it's said that a guy named Theodorus the Great, who was a king from the 5th and 6th centuries, once had the Spear of Destiny in his possession. During that time, his kingdom that he ruled was being invaded by another famous and very notorious historical warlord, a guy named Attila the Hun. If you've ever read up on Attila the Hun, it's a fascinating story, and it's something that the legend of like someone who rises up to unite tribes to basically take over the world is kind of based off of. He tries to take on the kingdom that Theodorus the Great is the king of. During that time, Attila the Hun had never lost a battle. When he goes up against Theodorus the Great, he loses. He's routed so badly, he has to send a full retreat, and they wound up not even trying to invade the kingdom. It said that Theodorus the Great was holding the Spear of Destiny, and he used it to defend his kingdom. So
interesting.
Attila the Hun story is fucking crazy too. Like, he basically tries to take on the entire world. He tries to take over like the whole of Rome. They send the fucking Pope out to talk to him. He basically tells the Pope, like, I'm going to take over whatever I want. And then the Pope comes back and tells everyone, like, God won't let him take Rome. And then Attila the Hun dies in his sleep. He had a blood vessel burst in his nose and he drowned his own blood. So,
what are the odds?
Yeah, very, very slim.
And
then
I've had a blood vessel pop in my nose while I was asleep, and I did not drown.
It's because you weren't laying on your back, like you were laying on your side, so it all spilled out on the fucking bed. But yeah, that's another crazy story. He didn't hold the Spear of Destiny. Maybe if he had it, we'd all be talking in whatever language the Huns would speak back then, and decided to like adapt it to. So,
were they Mongolian? No,
I honestly don't know what the Huns like. You can read up a lot of stuff about like because when the Huns tribes scattered, they basically scattered into like Europe and other parts of like Western Asia, I'm pretty sure. So it's really hard to trace where they all went, but they basically all scattered.
Well, I guess they were the Huns, right? Maybe I don't know.
So
I know nothing about history. Okay, guys, I'm not a historian.
I'm going to skip forward so we don't get into this because this is like the blind leading the blind when it comes to me explaining some history stuff to Robin. So remember last episode I talked about the sword, the mystical sword Durandal, and how it had like multiple origins. Robin might have been asleep when I talked about this, but there was a guy named Charlemagne. He was the first Holy Roman Emperor. He got Durandal supposedly from an angel who came down and gave it to him, was like, yo, give this to one of your assistants. You can't keep this for yourself. He gave it to Roland. Roland's the guy who legendarily wielded Durandal. When I was reading about that story, I was like, why would Charlemagne give up that sword? Like, I get the angel told him he had to, but once the angel went back to heaven, wasn't he just like, I'm keeping this thing, it's pretty sweet? Well, maybe the reason he gave it up so willingly is because he already had the Spear of Destiny, because Charlemagne is supposed to be one of the individuals who held the Spear of Destiny.
All right.
It said, while he held the Spear of Destiny, he fought 43 battles, and he won every single one. And he had it on him during those battles. He kept it on him mostly at all times, and later in his life, he took it with him, even when he wasn't at war. He took it with him during a hunting trip in November of 813, and supposedly dropped it. The legend states that when he dropped it and realized it was gone, he basically died the same day. Looking into his actual history and his actual death, he did have a hunting trip that he went on in November of 813, but he lived until January 28th of 814. It said that like around January, he got super depressed. He just like retreated into his room and he just sort of like,
he lost his spear.
Sort of like withered up and died. It took him like 7 days after he decided to like retreat into his room, and then he was gone. Like the official date he passed away is January 28th. 814, but like people that believe he held the Spear of Destiny insist that the reason this happened to him is because he lost it. It's a lot like the Ring of Power, guys. Like, it's weird. Like, it comes to people, no one really knows how it gets to them. They get super famous, super powerful, and then it just leaves them. And when it leaves them, like, it's bad situations. So it said that there is another Holy Roman Emperor that held the Spear of Destiny as well, one Frederick Barbarossa. If you've heard of Frederick Barbarossa and you're not exactly sure where from, he is a playable character in Sid Meier's Civilization game. If you decide you can choose him as the leader that you want to have lead your civilization.
Okay, so if he held it after some guy lost it, how did he magically get it?
Well, this is 300 years after the last guy lost it, and no one ever knows exactly how these guys acquire it. It's whether or not they get it and then they get super powerful, or they're powerful and they use their power to locate it. Because that has happened before, and we'll get to that later. In this case, he gets it. He keeps it on him at all times. He's winning all his battles. He's also leading armies, because that's just what fucking Holy Roman Emperors did, apparently, back in the day. And during that time, his army goes off on a march in one direction going somewhere, and he decides that he's going to try and find a shortcut with a smaller group of like individual soldiers. So he talks to some folks that are in what is currently Turkey. Some town in Turkey, and they tell him that there's actually a quicker way to get where he's going, but he has to cross the Salif River. So they tell him, like, just take the river. Eventually you'll see a spot where you'll all be able to cross it. He's like, fucking A, this is what I'm looking for. So they go to the river and they start looking. There's multiple witnesses about what happened, and they have different accounts. There's one story where it's basically he gets impatient and he decides he's just going to swim across the river on his own. There's another version where he's exhausted because they've been out fighting a whole bunch, and he's been winning these battles, but it's still taking a toll on him, and he decides he wants to stop, and they're going to bathe, essentially, or just sort of swim in the river to cool off.
And he's going to lose it in the river. He's got to.
Regardless of what happens, what is known historically, he drowns. Like, he goes into that river and he drowned. Some say he was swept away by the current. Some say that he just went under. There wasn't like a heavy current, and then he just never comes back up, and he's discovered later just dead. Like, died from, breathing water, which people can't do. We're not fish. So
there's a mermaid out there who's like, fuck you.
You're not a person, you're a mermaid. So we don't want to talk about that. That might be more controversial than everything else. But the legend regarding the Spear of Destiny is that regardless of what reason brought him into the water, while he was swimming, the Spear of Destiny was dropped. And when he realized he had dropped the Spear of Destiny, he dove into the water to try and find it. And through his desperation to find the Spear of Destiny,
drowned.
He basically kept staying under until he drowned. It's supposed to be physically impossible for a human being to drown themselves if you can somehow react once you're unconscious to remove yourself from the water. That said, it didn't appear to work for Frederick Barbarossa, and he drowned. And at that time, the spear was lost. It's said that the spear was lost. And let's be real. This is two Holy Roman emperors and some guy who was the king of a nation. There's not a lot of slouches that are being brought up during this topic. I mean, these are big, heavy hitters in history. These are some big names. But if you've seen Constantine or you've heard of the Spear of Destiny before, you probably know one of the more famous or infamous connections the Spear of Destiny has to a person of history, especially if you noticed when you were watching Constantine the particular flag that was wrapped around the Spear of Destiny when it was discovered. So the spear supposedly came into the possession of many people between the time Frederick Barbarossa lost it and the next several hundred years. There are lots of items that showed up claiming to be the quote-unquote real Spear of Destiny, and a lot of them wound up in museums. They were being showed off because it is such a famous artifact as like, hey, here's the Spear of Destiny, don't forget to pay your ticket. And it's said that one wound up in the Hofburg Treasure House in Vienna, the capital of Austria. And there, in September of 1912, a young 15-year-old boy saw it for the first time. After seeing it, he spoke to his best friend. That young man's best friend had this to say of how that conversation went down. Quote, "This is real." This is from a book he wrote. "He stood in front of me and gripped my hands and held them tight. He had never made such a gesture before. I felt from his grasp how deeply he was moved. His eyes were feverish with excitement. The words did not come smoothly from his mouth as they usually did, but rather erupted, hoarse and raucous. Never before and never again have I heard him speak as he did in that hour. I was struck by something strange which I had never noticed before, even when he talked to me in moments of his greatest excitement. It was as if another being spoke out of his body and moved him as much as it did me. It was not all a case of a speaker carried away by his own words. On the contrary, I rather felt as though he himself listened with astonishment and emotion to what burst forth from him with elemental force. Like floodwaters breaking their dikes, his words burst from him. He conjured up in grandiose, inspiring pictures his own future and that of his people. He was talking of a mandate which one day he would receive from the people to lead them from servitude to the heights of freedom, a special mission which would one day be entrusted to him. This is 1915. You can probably guess it.
This 15-year-old boy is Adolf Hitler.
Yes, is 100% Adolf Hitler. He saw the spear. He was moved to the point where he seemed possessed and spoke as though it was something else speaking out of him, talking of his own destiny. That was Adolf Hitler. It is very well known that Hitler had an obsession with the occult and believed very fervently that magical and mystical artifacts were real and needed to be brought under his control. Long story short with Hitler, he was fucking nuts. He basically brainwashed a nation of people through hate speech and horrific rhetoric, and he tried to take over the world and purge it of everyone that wasn't the quote-unquote superior race. The army of the Nazis burst forth across Europe and other fronts in 1939, literally trying to take over the world like a fucking comic book villain. And very quickly, he took control of Vienna, the capital of his home country of Austria. When he took Vienna, he immediately, this is true, took control of the artifact that was supposedly the Spear of Destiny that was in that museum. It was one of the first things he did when they took Vienna. That became
It belongs in a museum.
It said that lackadaisical ownership will bring about ruin. If you're the person that holds the Spear of Destiny and you're just using it like a fucking keychain or a paperweight, like it takes it as an insult basically, and that's what can make people lose it. It's like the ring of the ring of power deciding it's going to move on to someone else. And I can't confirm whether or not Hitler had a slipping devotion to this artifact that had possessed him in 1912, but it seems by the way things turned out, he did. Either that, or he didn't actually have it, or he did, and it's not real, or it just decided that he did not deserve its power. And in the final days of World War II, Germany itself was under siege, and the Allies, as they were retaking parts of Germany, were recovering not only the territory, but stolen treasures, because as the Nazis took all these different territories, they were literally plundering like the greatest accomplishments and art of those cultures. And while they were recovering them, I mean, in most cases they were being returned, they had a few things in particular that they were looking for to take that, needed to be brought back. And there was a lot of rumors about things that Adolf Hitler had. It said that when the U.S. Army took possession of the Spear of Destiny, or what he thought was the Spear of Destiny, the day that they took that from him, it took 90 minutes before he killed himself.
What?
90 minutes after the U.S. Army took possession of the artifact he believed to be the Spear of Destiny, 90 minutes later, he shot himself. I don't know if you guys knew that Adolf Hitler killed himself, but that's supposedly how Adolf Hitler died. Obviously, the end of World War II and Hitler's death are shrouded in mystery, to say the least, and conspiracy theories galore. So I'm not saying that this is historical fact. I don't want people to be like, are you going to believe what they told you, sheep? But that's...
It was like, it was really known. It was known to everyone that Hitler was into occult stuff.
100%.
That he was deeply into it.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the other, like, I'm pretty sure when I'm going to cover the other ones that I'm going to cover, we're going to talk about Hitler again, because, he believed in this shit. Like, he believed these things had power, and they needed to be brought to him because they could stop him otherwise. But this is the legend of the spear in the most recent times. Like, this is the best way I can put this, okay? The Spear of Destiny is supposed to be the head of a spear, like the actual pointy end, that killed Jesus Christ. And my grandfather was in the war where it was supposedly recovered from a dude who tried to take over the world. My granddad was there. That was not that long ago. So this fucking guy thought it was real enough to try and take over the world and obtain it because he thought it was like granting him a destiny that he needed to fulfill since he was 15 years old. That shit's crazy, dude. Like, after the war, multiple versions of the spear appeared all over the world. I mean, it's super famous. Someone sent one to the Pope and claimed that they had recovered it for Christianity and it needed to be like given back to the church. One went back to the Hofburg treasure house where Hitler had acquired it from. There's a version in Krakow, Poland, excuse me. There's one in Paris. I don't know if it's still there. And for quite some time, they basically all claimed to be the authentic one, all at the same time. There's more out there besides the ones I just named. But for a long time, they're all like, this is authentic. A lot of them to this point have been carbon dated, and they now are on display as a replica. They don't state that they're the authentic one because we can prove like, hey, this is made of plastic and it has a sticker on it that says $9.99. This is clearly not the one that killed Jesus. So as of today, the Roman Catholic Church denies the authenticity of any and all known Spear of Destiny on display around the world. So if you're saying like, which one's the official one? The answer is none of them. But this is something that people that try to rule and in some cases destroy the world seek out. They believe in it. They believe having it in their possession will like bless their mission and guide them. We're at the part of the episode where I go over whether or not I think what I just covered is real. And this is what I wrote for this one, and I sincerely mean this. Whether or not I think the Spear of Destiny is real is completely irrelevant. The belief in the Spear of Destiny is real. There's no debating that. And it seems
I agree.
It seems to embolden some of the most dangerous people that have ever existed in the history of mankind. And if it's in their possession, the entire world is going to know. Like, there's going to be fallout from the fact that someone like that has obtained what they believe is the Spear of Destiny, regardless of if it is, and regardless if it's real. I hope it isn't real. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I hope the Spear of Destiny isn't an actual thing. And if it is, I hope it stays hidden forever. And that, my spooky friends, is the Spear of Destiny.
What if the Spear of Destiny isn't an actual spear? What if it's something like, some Dan Brown shit, where it's not a literal Spear of Destiny, but it's like the blood of some, like it's the line, a lineage. You know what I mean?
Like the descendants of the person who killed Jesus Christ. Dan Brown's going to play that trick twice.
Have you watched the City of Angels, Penny Dreadful
I have not.
season? Natalie Dormier just plays
She's so hot.
This. She is very hot, but she plays this influencer throughout the story. She plays all these different characters to negatively influence these people. And I'm wondering if maybe the Spear of Destiny is something along those lines, where she's just there to cause chaos.
This is one that's like, when you dig really deep into Spear of Destiny, you see some crazy shit. Like, people believe not only that it exists, but that they know where the real one is, and like they can change the world if it just gets into the right person's hand. And when you read about shit like that, that is some scary shit, dude. Like, people are very, very rigid in their beliefs in general. When it comes to like taking over the world type of shit, that's when I'm like, I really hope this is fake. Like, I am in no way, shape, or form on board with like that being a thing. And if it is, for the love of God, like, keep it hidden, keep it safe. I read something that they built a church in Rome and they put it in one of the pillars. Like, there's a bunch of things about like different conspiracy theories about how they hid it to keep this from happening over and over. And when I read those, I'm like, what if one of these is right? Like, what if I read one day, like, random church in Rome has one of its pillars knocked down, and then the next thing you know, we're all like, oh, look, World War III is broken out. So it's a scary topic for sure.
I find it absolutely fascinating, though, because those people that want to take over the world, they have to get this inspiration from somewhere. And this like idea that, yeah, I can take over the world,
I think it's nuts. Like a mental disorder,
yeah.
Like, that gives them delusions of grandeur, combined with means and opportunity, combined with like the belief in the occult, all culminating into like, it's like right place, right time. It's like right place, wrong time for the world. So let's hope we don't hear about the Spear of Destiny at any point in the near future. But that, my spooky friends, is Magical Artifacts 2.
Cool. Thanks.
No problem. All right. So before we get into Robin's topic, we were going to take a quick commercial break.
All right. So this week is obviously about going on adventures. I know Adam's topic is really fascinating. And it's like this object that kind of is something that traveled all over the world and through time. But my topic, however, is different. It's a different kind of adventure. It's an adventure that doesn't require a lot of traveling, at least for me. And it's a location that's off the beaten path. It's a little different. And by off the beaten path, I mean mostly forgotten path, because people don't travel it very often.
Okay.
And that is because my topic is that of a ghost town. A ghost town.
So you're doing a topic on my heart.
Oh, damn it.
Now
in the Bodie Hills, east of the Sierra Mountains and southeast of Lake Tahoe, is the town of Bridgeport, California. And southeast of that town, about 12 miles away, is Bodie, a certifiable ghost town. And this town has an elevation of about 8,400 feet. That's
Pretty tall.
high as fuck.
Yeah,
So
Denver is famously very high. They're the Mile High City, which means they're 5,280 feet elevated.
wow,
That's
I did not know
that's
that.
3,000 feet more. That's pretty high.
Yeah, so for comparison, the elevation of LA is 285 feet.
Holy fuck, LA is right there.
The elevation of Mount Fuji is 12,000 feet.
God, it's such a pretty mountain. It's also a
Yeah,
volcano.
it's a big ass mountain. So this place is pretty fucking high up there, 8,400 feet. It's high. And if you want to compare like Lake Tahoe, that's right there. It's a skiing place, right? It's a skiing area once it snows. So this town, you can kind of imagine when it's wintertime, is just covered. This town wasn't always full of hollow abandoned buildings and old graves. It used to be this hustling, bustling, town back in the day. And in fact, it used to be home to upwards of 10,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. In the late 1870s, too. That's a lot of people. In 1849, a guy named William S. Bodie, a prospector, and his partner, friend, whatever, named Black Turner, discovered gold. And they discovered lots of gold. And it was in the hills near what would be the site of this town, obviously, named after Bodie himself. Unfortunately for him, he didn't get to see the town kind of grow and flourish because he died in the winter either that year or the following year. So he didn't get to see everything that it would become, which is really sad. But this town, it started off as a small mining camp. It had about 20 miners, not little children, like people that were there to mine.
I'm glad you clarified.
So it had about 20 miners. And just years later, after investment money from New York started funneling in, this place grew. Like, it just blew up. And the 1870s saw the construction of shaft and tunnel mine systems, which would allow for more gold mining. And more gold meant more growth. Lots of mines meant lots of gold. And these mines just went up all over. And the economy kind of boomed. I think there were like 30 mines nearby. So it's a lot.
They now have more mines than they had miners before. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. So this town grew so much that it even had its own milling station for the gold ore that they kept pulling up from the mines. And this town even offered things that big cities had. One of these notable offerings was a Wells Fargo bank.
Nice.
So this town got so big it had its own Wells Fargo, which is something I'm sure we take for granted in this day and age. But like back then, bruh, you had your own bank. Fucking sweet. They also had 4 volunteer fire companies, a handful of breweries, and multiple town newspapers. Why a town needs more than one newspaper, I'll never know.
So one can call the other one fake news, obviously.
Those things are obviously pretty big for a small town in the late 1800s. They had unions for their like miners and stuff like that, and they had churches. They even had railroad
had
that
churches
went
back
through.
then. I mean, I prefer Popeyes, but
Oh my God, they had 2 churches, one of which is still standing, which is cool. All this stuff, like having a railroad go through your town, these things used to be a really big deal. Because if you had a railroad running through you, you were popping. You know what I mean? It was like you became a hub.
I'm glad you said if you had a railroad running through you and not if you had a train running through you, because that sounds a lot different.
I mean, okay, know what's funny is like, I meant town-wise, because if it was people-wise, it's like, you don't want to have a railroad or train running through you, because then you'd be dead.
And don't yuck someone's yum. Some people like trains.
You, of course, have to remember that this is the West in the late 1800s. And Adam and I watch fucking A Million Ways to Die in the West all the fucking time. But the West wasn't all peaches and cream or biscuits and gravy or whatever people say. But the wild frontier was wild. So at one point, this town, it had dozens of saloons along its main thoroughfare. Any booming city or town is bound to have its seedy underbelly, all the crime, all the violence, all the gang activity. Lots of money meant lots of problems. You could even say
Mo money,
mo problems. Drinks and money in the Wild West meant lots of fights and lots of violence. The town earned a reputation for being kind of this bad place to go. It got the nickname of Big Bad Bodie, which is so sad, but you know, once you're like a big boy, you know,
Wow.
the town's it's just people are bound to be hating.
It's a pretty good nickname. I mean, obviously it's like notorious, but it's still catchy.
A reverend named F.M. Warrington would go on to describe the town as, quote, a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion, end quote.
Say that again, slower.
Like I said, this town was poppin'. Okay. So supposedly, this, I was like, there's no way this happened. But supposedly, a little girl that was moving to the town with her family prayed and said, goodbye, God, we are going to Bodhi.
Wow.
I don't believe that, but I mean, maybe,
It's a good story,
maybe
though.
some kid would say that. Despite the sinful connotation that Methodist church, the church that I was telling you about, still stands. So, people respected that enough to leave it standing. Murder wasn't necessarily uncommon here. There were lots of criminals, lots of criminal activity, and these criminals would kill who they needed in order to get ahead. Supposedly, at least one person was killed a day. That's just, I mean, these days, lots of people die every day. But like,
yeah, I mean, but per capita, this place is dangerous as fuck.
yeah. That being said, there was only a single jail in this entire town.
That's funny.
One jail meant not a lot of rooms for all these criminals. But in the Wild West, there's lots of rooms for dead bodies. Just saying. So they could bury a lot of people wherever they wanted, but there was really only one jail for all the criminals. As with any mining town, it died down as soon as the mines started to dry up. Bodie in the 1900s was more of a tourist town than a mining town because all the mines started shutting down one by one. And when the 1920s hit and the Prohibition hit, it kind of became the place to go to drink and have a good time because when you went to Bodie, you could drink and do all that stuff and police kind of turned a blind eye to it. And I bet it's because they just got paid off.
I'm pretty sure I've heard of this place before. It's what happens in Bodie stays in Bodie, right? That's them?
Yep, straight up. Mhm.
Okay, cool.
So in 1932, the town experienced devastation. Story goes that a kid got mad because he didn't get the birthday cake he wanted.
Okay.
And with a few matches, he decides to set his kitchen table on fire. So he sets this kitchen table on fire, and this fire, over a stupid cake, would go on to set fire to 95% of the town.
Holy shit, dude.
So this little asshole burns down 95% of their town.
That's a fucking tantrum right there.
Which is mind-boggling considering there were 4 volunteer fire companies in this town. Despite the destruction, people lived in the town even past World War II, until the last mine was shut down in 1947. So once all the mines were shut down and they were all dried up, people took what they could and left what they couldn't take. And it was too far away to support any sort of sustainable business. There was no point in making a hotel or doing any of the restaurant things or anything. Even now, it's 15 miles off-road from the nearest highway. So it's pretty far from anything. No one wanted to go so far out of their way. And the town was left to kind of fall back into nature, like it was abandoned. And by the 1960s, only 6 people were left in the town. And they would eventually, not live in the town. But
Wow.
I'll get there. Hold on.
I was going to say, does that mean they died or does that mean they left?
Eventually, California bought the area and made it a state park. 500 acres of state park is a huge state park.
Yeah, it is.
It was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1961. These days, the town is home to a few rangers in the fancier houses, like the OG houses that were there, but nicer ones, while a few other spirits retain residence as well everywhere else, because it's haunted. But the Wild West is abundant with spirits. It's gotta be. Lots of crime, lots of violence, lots of murder. It was called the Wild West for a reason, obviously. They didn't have medical tools and doctors like we have now, so once something happened to you, there was a low chance that you'd survive. I mean, what was the average age that people lived to back then,
I don't know. That's a good question. That's something that
yeah.
you should have looked up when you're
I should have looked that up, but they didn't live as long, I'll tell you that.
I mean, I know that toe foot could turn into knee leg in less than a week, so.
It was a free-for-all in how long you could survive out there, and this town was an exception. Lots of death, lots of murder. In a town known for drinking, partying, brothels, and money, it's really no surprise that it kind of went off the rails, so to speak. One of these violent stories involves some of the last citizens in Bodhi. So, there was a man named Ed. Supposedly, he was a piece of crap. We'll begin with his having murdered his Native American wife while drunk and angry. He shot her in the chest. So that's 2 people of the 6 that remained in the town. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
So he shoots his wife. She dies in the hospital. 3 other people decide Ed needed to be punished for his crimes. So that's 5 out of the 6. They tie him up and drop him in a creek where they kick him until he's unconscious.
What? I was like, oh, so they're going to, try him and send him to jail.
No. So they kick him until he is unconscious in this creek and he drowns.
Oh, creek kicking. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Yep. So he drowns in this creek. Story goes that 2 months later, Ed's ghost appears to each of these 3 men, the 3 men that killed him. According to the legend, he shows up shaking his fists at them and like trying to attack them. They each end up dying, one right after the other, each under strange and unpredictable circumstances. So one dies after suffering a huge gash on his face. Another dies from hemorrhage that swells his head until he dies. And then the third disappears and is eventually found dead in a ravine somewhere.
Jesus Christ. It seems like they were murdered.
Mayhaps. Murdered by the ghost of Ed, obviously.
I hate you.
But it was the remaining 1 citizen that told the story of what happened. So
this person killed all of them, obviously.
Maybe, but yeah, as most legends tend to go, just 1 person left told the story of everything. Whether it was a cursed or just a fun, spooky story, who knows? But I like to think that it was a curse. That's more fun that way. There is a cemetery, aptly named the Bodhi Cemetery, where the angel, the quote-unquote angel of Bodhi, is said to reside. So, a 3-year-old girl named Evelyn Myers is said to have been killed accidentally when she was hit with a miner's pick. He had been hired to dig a drainage ditch at her house, obviously hired by her parents, not by the 3-year-old. Evelyn got too curious and leaned over a railing to see what he was doing.
So sad.
When his pickaxe came up and hit her. So after her death, her parents moved from Bodhi, but left her behind, which is super sad.
Also sad,
because she's buried there, Her grave is marked with a marble angel, and it's really pretty. It looks like it's leaning over a scroll. It's this little girl who is said to come out and play with other children who visit her grave. One family reported that when visiting the cemetery, their youngest, who was in preschool at the time, was sitting by Evelyn's grave. Their daughter began to giggle and laugh, playing with someone that her parents couldn't see. When asked by her father who she was playing with, she answered that it was another little girl that had a hole in her head.
Fuck.
Yeah, bro.
Only kids, like, let's say she could actually see this little girl. Only a kid would be like, I'm gonna play with that person with a hole in their head. Like,
Yeah,
that
for
didn't
real.
seem
It's just
like
really
a bad
creepy.
sign.
Another male tourist was standing by the Miners' Union Hall when he heard a little disembodied cry from what sounded like a young girl that said, "Daddy,"
Wow.
which is super creepy as well. There are a lot of unmarked graves in the area as well. Even lots of graves who've had their stone markers stolen. Those people should definitely get cursed. Like the people that stole the stones. Like, bro,
Yeah.
that's such a shitty thing to do.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't know about you guys, but if my grave were unmarked, I'd definitely haunt the heck out of people. A lot of the Chinese residents of Bodhi were among those that were buried in these unmarked graves because it was just some racist crap from those times. You know, they're like, you're Asian, sorry, you can't get buried in our cemetery kind of crap. It's just so stupid. So lots of people think that the fact that they were buried, a lot of these people were buried in unmarked graves may play a part in the hauntings around town or the weird things that might happen there. The J.S. Kane House at the corner of Park and Green is said to be one of the town's most haunted locations, with the sighting of a ghost maid being the most frequent. So this ghost maid is supposedly known to love children, but hate the adults that accompany them. One of these adults reported that they felt pushed or suffocated by an unseen entity. Doors also open and close on their own, which is weird. Adults that have slept in the house have woken up to a quote-unquote heavyset Chinese woman sitting on them, which to me sounds like sleep paralysis, but I don't know.
Some people are
Maybe
into
it's
that.
just I don't know, man. I would definitely do stupid stuff like that if I was a ghost. At the Mendocini house, it's said, or Mendocini? At the Mendocini house, it's said that there are several ghosts residing there. One of these ghosts is said to be Mrs. Mendocini herself, because you can smell, like, the smell of Italian cooking coming from the house. There's also been reports of, like, the sound of children's laughter or, like, a big group party or something going on inside the house as well, which is really both creepy and cool. You can actually visit Bodhi still if you want. It's open all year round, though you might not want to go up in the winter unless you have, like, some snow tires or something. It's a little difficult to get there. Definitely think about bringing an all-wheel drive vehicle if you plan on visiting, because a lot of the road is actually unpaved. Only a small part of what the town once was still exists, but that small part is still about 110 structures. So as far as ghost towns go, this one's pretty big. It's not bad for a ghost town. You can walk the streets. There are shops still standing that still have things on their shelves that are just covered in dust. Of course, there's the typical litter, glass stuff all over the road, all over those path walkways. But, I mean, rangers still live in one of the original homes. So, obviously, some of these structures are still pretty sturdy for how long they've been standing. And I bet it's probably amazing to walk through this place and just see everything. If you like that cool, old-timey thing, I think it'd be fun. But, there are supposedly spirits that protect what was Bodhi, or what makes up Bodhi, like the entire town, what it is, you know? Apparently, if you take anything from this town, be it large or small, you'll be cursed. So anyone who takes things are said to experience bad luck until they return what they took. So it kind of reminds me of the legend in Hawaii, where if you take any lava rocks or sand or things like that, you're gonna have bad luck and tortured forever.
Yeah,
right?
just leave people shit there. Like, you don't have to steal from ghosts. Like, what a dick move that is.
Right. Much like with the hotels in Hawaii, rangers from Bodhi get letters and packages containing items from people claiming that the curse followed them when they took what they shouldn't have. So I was reading, there are like a lot of stories of people who have experienced like injuries or just multiple episodes of bad luck on top of bad luck on top of bad luck, just happening over and over again. You can actually go read these letters in the museum, which I think is fascinating. There's a book log of all the items that people have returned.
Wow.
Supposedly, these people were just haunted by spirits of past Bodhi residents that are guarding the little that's left of the town. I think it's a fun legend, a fun story. I definitely would not want to steal anything. So I hope you guys don't steal anything either. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, the tale of Bodhi, the ghost town in California.
Yeah. If any of you have been there, I'd really like to know. And obviously, if we get to 110 patrons, we're more than willing
you always say this.
To go stay in Bodhi. We'll take our tent. We'll stay there overnight. So we should actually commit to going to some of these places for patron goals, because we used to do that, in season 1, or I should say year 1. But yeah, very interesting story, especially the part with the murders.
Yeah.
But I can't believe that they decided to punish someone for killing their wife by taking him to the creek and kicking him unconscious so he would drown. That just is batshit crazy to me, but it's still pretty. I don't want to say funny, but it is kind of funny at how bizarre things went down in this town. But I'd like to see it
was
myself.
The Wild Wild West.
Yeah, for sure. I hate that movie, but yeah, I think this is more interesting than that.
I like that movie.
You're insane, but
anyways, do you not like that movie?
Good topic, because the movie is garbage. That's how. But you definitely did a very good topic. Way better than the movie Wild Wild West. I think we can all agree.
I love that movie.
I love your topic.
Will Smith is hilarious in it.
Indeed.
And the theme song, mwah.
Okay.
Lyrical wordsmith.
I'm just going to cut the episode off if you keep giving compliments to Wild Wild West. All right, I do think that's everything we have for episode 243. If you have a story you would like to share with us that's paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, coincidental, true crime, or extraterrestrial in nature, feel free to reach out to us. You can email storytime@scaryish.com, or you can go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. Fill out the form. It comes directly to us. Or you can hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, for folks who'd like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $8. At $1 you get ad free, which is cool. If you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast, and those are one-time donations. All your donations go to helping us just keep this show going and paying for all our background fees we got going on. But we're thankful for everybody who does support us and share us, and any way you support us, we appreciate you.
Indeed. So thank you all for helping us keep this rig a-rolling, and we're going to keep it going for as long as we can. So this has been episode 243. We hope you enjoyed it. Robin, why don't you do your thing and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.